work, one whole day to play. Come on, everybody, wear your roller skates today. It's Saturday, 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 it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, Saturday, it's Saturday, yeah.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Career Exploration Saturday. I'm your host, Ebony Tyler. I have real conversations with real people about real jobs. So this week, my guest is Siu Cheng, the 55A coordinator for the Department of Citywide Administrative Services for New York City. Trigger warning, Siu talks candidly about child abuse, suicide, and domestic violence. If you want to skip this part of the conversation, start at the 17-minute mark. Siu's story is inspiring, not because she survived trauma, but because she was hired in a New York City civil service job directly out of her public assistance work experience program. Let's jump right into my conversation with Siu. So good afternoon. Welcome, Siu. I'm so glad to have you here on Career Exploration Saturday. So you know how we start all of our conversations. Tell us about who 16-year-old Siu was. Did you have it all together? Did you know what you want to do in life?
Actually, 16-year-old me was a tough one. I was at the highest point in high school. I was an aspiring sophomore, and I was on the honor roll, student of the month, everybody loves me, that kind of thing. And when the school had an open house, I was, I guess, the lead in it, you know, that kind of person. I had the button, the fancy little button that says, hey, this is the person you need to talk to, you know, that kind of thing. What it was the lowest point also at the same time was that at home I was being abused. You can't tell by looking at me that I was a product of abuse. I was physically abused as well as emotionally and mentally abused by my parents. And so forget about those stories, the stereotype about tiger mom. I had tiger mom and dad, so it was doubly hard. So while at school, I was being, you know, rewarded for having a good grades and all that stuff. At home, I was actually being totally opposite. So, and also, sophomore year was pretty hard. It was like by day, I was this perfect student. And then as soon as I left school, it was the hard home life. My parents were small business owners, Chinese food takeouts. So I know a lot about Chinese food, okay? That's where I learned customer service. And what was difficult was that being that I was one of many siblings that my parents had, they were very strict on, well, if you want to go to college, you must work at the store. So I thought, all right, good, fine. I'll go work at the store. I'll learn new things. I'll learn the job. I'll learn, you know, everything life has to offer. But it didn't happen that way. And it just escalated to me being suicidal. I was a very suicidal teenager. So I had thoughts of suicide. I was also anemic, not anemic. What's the opposite of bulimia? The other one. Anorexia. Anorexia, yes. So I was always told by my parents and that I was too big. So I always try to limit. That didn't help because at school I'm this perfect person. So I was living a double life. Did I know everything? Definitely not. Did I know how to survive? Yes. Not by choice though. Had to learn it the hard way that, okay, how do I get through my day? I go to school, do what I can there. And then as soon as I leave, I go to work, and then make sure I do my homework at work. And I grab dinner there, and then afterwards go home and pray that I don't get in their path, while at home. And then I start the day over and over. But eventually it got too much. So yeah, there was one day. It was one day in October, around this month, this time of year, and I tried to commit suicide one night. I took one too many pills. And I kept praying to God that please just take me. This is too much pressure for a teenager. You know, I'm being told that at home I have responsibilities of a parent, but I don't have a child. And the child that I'm supposedly raising was my little sister. And then it was, at the same time, it was just the culture clash between my parents' old school culture, that being that I'm the older sibling, I'm supposed to take care of the younger sibling, and also going to school during a day where this is the American culture, where you're basically conforming to society, and you're a student and you're a teenager, you're supposed to have a life, you know, the regular teenage life. Right. It didn't happen that way. So one night in October, after all that hours of thinking, I just decided to pop pills. And the next day, clearly I woke up for school. And I was just like, this feels like hell on earth for a teenager. Okay. Hell on earth. I'm like, I am awake. I don't want to be awake. I remember going to school that day, and I just had this dark look on my face. And I'm usually very expressive. So when I'm happy, I'm extremely happy, that kind of person. So, but that day I was so dark. I did not smile. I couldn't smile. All I wanted to do was cry. And I remember my classmates asking me, hey, Stu, are you okay? And I'm like, no, life is dandy. Moving on. And I remember just kind of breezing through the day in that mode. And also when I went to my counselor's office, because I had the scheduled counselor appointments, and she took one look at me and said, okay, Sue, something is on your mind. You are acting totally different, out of character than your usual. What happened? She didn't ask me, what did I do? She just said, what happened? Right. And I said to her, I tried committing suicide last night. It didn't work. I am here and I'm miserable. And then she asked me, what did you do? And I said, well, them pills didn't work. And I try to make a very sarcastic joke about it, because that's how I felt. I felt cold. I felt I didn't have the heart to joke about things lightheartedly. I was just very cold, void of emotions kind of thing. And she said to me, how are you feeling? I'm like, if you're asking me if my stomach hurts, no, it doesn't. Am I hungry? No. And it's like I went down the list of all the questions, and I remember telling her that, yeah, I just want to get out of there. Can you show me how? Because I don't want to go home. So she did what every other caring adult did. Called the school officials, and then took me to the hospital. And the doctors on staff was, well, she clearly does not seem to be exhibiting some kind of pain. So we're just going to keep her overnight. So I was admitted. And another key point for that night was, so obviously they called my parents. I have an older sister who drove my mom to the hospital. And instead of asking me, how am I, through the window, they were yelling at me in Chinese over the window. And I specifically told the staff, hospital staff, that, hey, I don't want to talk to them. And no, I'm not leaving with them. Do you mind if I go back in? I'll just sit there quietly. And the staff just turned around, told my family members that, you should just go home. So long story short, that night led to me being admitted into a psychiatric center for children. But instead of being, I guess, locked up with other children, with other kids with actual mental disability. I was actually locked up with a bunch of drug dealers, people who took drugs. So they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't know what to do with them. And they just lumped all of us together. But I had a great time there. Okay. So that was my silver lining. I had a great time there. Why? As much as it sounds so, dreary or whatever, because I was in a safe place. I could be me. And what other people noticed was that me equals I am a reader. I like to read. I like to keep up to date with things, like the books that you have on your bookshelves. At that time, my psychiatrist has books like those too. So I said to him one day, I was like, "Hey, can I just read those books up there, just to entertain myself?" And I remember what he used to say. He's like, "You might as well. You seem like you're having a great time here." I'm like, it's vacation for me. I don't get to go anywhere. I don't get to, because I'm still a minor, I didn't get to do anything. Yeah. So I did a lot of self-taught. I don't think that's a good word, but for the lack of a better word, self-taught psychiatry and psychology, because that's all the type of books he had on his shelf. But it definitely taught me a lot of things, being there. I learned about the culture clash, and how when we had family sessions, I try to communicate to them in Chinese that, just because it worked for you back then, it doesn't work for me here, because I'm being raised in a modern society. And I am doing the best I can. And even now, as a grown-up, looking back, I don't know about you, but juggling a full-time job and a A+ report card is pretty hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
But yet, I've done both at the same time. And instead of for whatever reason that my parents did what they did, and even during the sessions, it just came across to me that, this is something that they don't understand. And honestly, to tell you, to this day, I don't think my mom knows who I am.
Wow.
And I don't think it's because of lack of trying. It's because, one, they were from a generation or a culture or a time where none of this is here. Over there, they didn't have computers. They didn't have, my mom never worked. She's a housewife. And here I am, one of many daughters that they have. And we're all taught how to work, So just by that alone, I can't relate to my mom and she can't relate to me. And, and I'm sure you've heard of it, where there's a lot of people who are married for 50 years. Yeah, like perfect love kind of thing. That was my parents. And they're just like, "Oh, you can't talk to another guy without me." I was like, "Mom, then you should have never brought me here and stuck me in a co-ed school."
Yeah. So how did you what happened? Did you graduate high school?
I did actually.
Okay.
But not in that high school. So after that happened, not that my parents actually admitted, so they took me out of a private high school, which that was what I was attending, an all-girls school, and I ended up going to a public school. But being that I was such a good student in that private school, they just stuck me in an honors program in the public school. They didn't know what to do with me.
Okay.
So, and I was like one of those transfer students with perfect grades, and they're just like, "I don't know what to do with you. Well, here's some I think are appropriate for you. So go do something with those, And so I did graduate from high school. I think if my parents took more of an active interest of my academics, or a little bit more support, that would have been nice. I think I would have graduated with honors, but instead I opted for the regular diploma,
Okay.
not the honors one.
Yeah. And then what happened? Did you go off to college?
Nope.
No.
No, I didn't get to do that either. So while in my teenage years, as part of my, I guess, teenage rebellion, I met an older guy. Bad situation there. So in mistaking his affections for love, I did not go to college. My parents did not hold up their end of the bargain. I did not go. So I thought, okay, my parents don't want me around. 17, I signed up for military. I signed up for the Navy. And of course, at 17, you're still considered a minor. So they were like, oh, we need your mom to sign off. I'm like, oh, you'll get that in 5 seconds. She doesn't seem to care. And they're like, no way. Every parent's care. I was like, okay. They showed up on a Saturday with papers in hand. My mom let them in and said, what's this? And I said, oh, I'm going to the military. She just looked at them. She's like, hand over the papers. Signed right there. She didn't ask any question. She was just like, just hurry up and get out of here. And I remember the officer was like, this is the quickest signature I ever got in my years as recruitment and everything. And I'm like, yeah, my parents don't want me around. And that was an odd choice because I'm not athletic. I was a bookworm basically growing up. And it was just weird. And of course, like I said, I was with this older guy. So I signed up. I did go to boot camp for a few months, but then I was deemed not physically well or physically fit for boot camp. So I got booted out of boot camp 3 months later. So I got sent home. And I remember the phone call. So right before you get shipped home, you get a phone call. You call your parents and let them know, blah, blah, blah. I called home. The first thing my mother said to me was, why? Why are you coming back now? And I'm just like, well, it's fine. I don't need to go home to you. I just, I was told to call you, so I'm calling you. And she's like, yeah, don't come back. So I came back to the older guy. I ended up marrying him right out of high school. So that was basically it. And I learned life the hard way with no support. And that somehow I knew that, that wasn't the life for me anyway, but went through a couple of dark periods to get to where I'm at.
So you've been through some things.
Yeah, I've been through some things.
You've been through some things. Your younger years were tough, but you are, in a role now that is impactful, and your job changes lives. So how did you get to your role? So you work for city government and you've been there for, 14, 15 years? Yeah. So how did you get to city government? Tell us how you got there, and then let's talk.
Yeah, definitely. So this is the fun part. The fun part of my life begins. Okay. So in my 20s, I got into another argument with mom and dad, and I was left out in the streets. By then, I was a divorced single mom with a 3-year-old, and I was put to the street, so I had to live in a domestic violence shelter for a little bit. And from there, they put me, obviously through all the programs and the procedures to get the benefits. And part of the benefits, public assistance benefits, was that I needed to work like a work assignment, like a job, but unpaid. And I was like, okay, great. Better than me sitting around, twiddling my thumbs. And I even thought about then, I was like, oh, maybe I should, pick up some classes, do something with myself. I was like, okay, I've been out of high school for so long. Maybe I need college prep courses. I did that. And just to find out that, academics come so easily to me. Okay. enough of the bragging over here, but
No, talk your stuff. Do you smart?
No, yeah, but like I didn't think, like when you go to class in high school, right? You're like, I was good at mostly the math, the numbers, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just so funny how, college prep was all about those math. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really like this. Okay. And I made some friends. In the college prep courses. A couple of them that I'm still friends to this day. There was one that I made friends with that she died because she was a lot older than me. Things like that. So I was like, okay, maybe I can do college. Okay, I'm not working. I can do college. That didn't work. So I got this work assignment at my current agency, DCAS. And at that time, I was, my only task was to file papers all day. They used to give thousands of these papers piled up on the wall in boxes. And they're like, you see those? Go put them in the cabinets over there. Figure out how you're going to sort it over there. And I'm like, okay. I was like, that's all I got to do here. They're like, yep, just do that. 9 to 5, there. So I looked at all the pieces of paper and I was like, okay, I know what to do with these things. I'm going to go file them according to the year that people sign them. So I started to sort the, piles of everything. And then that's when I started sorting them, labeling everything. And the person in the unit, the head of the unit at the time, she looked at me. She looked at piles of paper. She's like, do you need a break? And I'm like, no, I'm on a roll. This is good. And then slowly those boxes start to fall. Yeah. And then a couple of weeks in, mind you, I'm only there like 3 days a week. So 3 days a week for a couple of weeks, thousands of paper, totally gone. Because I was like, I am going to do this. This is not a challenge. This is boredom work. Move things around, right? Okay. So a few weeks in, and I didn't realize that they were actually watching me like all the time because they never had a web person before, the work experience. What do they call it? Work experience.
Work experience participant.
Yes, thank you. So they never had a web person before, so they didn't know what to do with me. They just know that I am very excited to come here every day and that I'm enthusiastic to pull up thousands of pieces of paper all day. And I'm just like, listen, you don't know what kind of life I've been through. This is actually fun. So that basically it's a couple of months went in. So I was in there in July 2006. And I worked first 3 days a week. Then eventually the head of the unit spoke to the head of the program and they said, hey, we want her 5 days a week. She's cleaning up all our offices and we need her around. So, and then once they escalated my schedule, something happened at work, not related to me. Because at the time when I was working, I didn't even have a desk. I was sharing a desk with an intern. Yeah. So, and not just that, I was by the file cabinets 9 to 5, so I didn't really need a desk. But anyway, long story short, that person or the secretary or I don't really know what was her title, but she was the assistant, answer the phones, kind of receptionist / secretary kind of person. One day she didn't come to work. And the head of the unit was like, hey, you over there. I'm like, me? And they're like, yeah, let's take a break from those papers and I need you to go pick up those phone calls because they're ringing off the hook. And I'm like, okay, no big deal. So one of the things I learned in Chinese food, pick up the phone. Hello, how can I help you? That kind of thing. And then from the phone calls, then started with, hey, can you take messages? Hey, can you type up this for me? Hey, can you do this other stuff for me? Do you know PowerPoint? Okay, you don't? All right, let me show you a couple of pointers. And then that's how I learned from there. And then each day, they just gave me a little bit more tasks. They were like, oh, if you don't know how to do it, I'll show you how to do it. I was like, yes, Okay. So, and then from then on, in like October-ish, um, beginning of October of the same year, 2006, I remember HR coming to one of the staff members coming up to me one day and said, "Here's a stack of papers, fill it out, and then bring it back to me." I'm like, "What's this for?" They're like, "Oh, you didn't know?" I'm like, "No, what?" "They're getting hired." I'm like, "Oh, that would be nice if someone told me." You know?
And you didn't interview, you didn't apply. They literally just offered you this job, a city job, mind you.
A city job, a city job. Yeah, I was in the right place, right time.
Wow. But you
And
know what, Sue? It's a little bit more than right place at the right time, right? Like you had the skills, and whenever they, offered you more job tasks, you did it.
yeah,
And, people like to work with people that they like and people who are reliable. So why not bring you on board full time and then pay you for it?
exactly. So as much as I agree with everything you're saying, there are some supervisors who are not in the position of hiring.
Mm.
They can tell you that they want you there and have you stay as a rep or a minimum wage, internship. But there are some hiring managers, or they come across as hiring managers, but they don't have influencing power to actually hire.
So tell us about that, because you are actually in recruitment.
Yes. So in city government, the roles of a recruiter is different from a hiring manager, and definitely hiring managers in city government has, I guess, different levels. They could be the ones only doing the interviews. They may not be high enough of rank to actually push the paperwork through, to actually say, okay, we need this position. So those people could be actual managers. They could be in my case, it was an assistant commissioner. So I mean, you got different rank levels, So hiring managers could be simple as someone who supervised office employee. I mean, I was there at one point before I was a recruiter, and then the other hiring managers, depending on how big their units are, it could range from mid-level supervisor to a highest of the managers, could be a deputy commissioner or a commissioner, themselves. So that's what I'm saying. In my case, the unit that I worked for back then, it was called the Citywide Equal Employment Opportunity Office. Mm-hmm. And it was a tiny office. It was only 4 people when I was there. 4 people and a couple of interns. So it was the secretary or the assistant, that's one, the assistant commissioner. And then there was a director of compliance, and then and an analyst compliance. So there's only 4 people there. So that means potentially in this little small office, all 4 of them could be hiring managers, but only one of them has enough rank and power to push the paperwork through.
Wow.
Yeah. City government is complicated as it is. Like even during times of COVID, and I'm sure you've heard of the mayor speak many times, where all the money is funneling to like one section of city government, right?
Right.
So when you go to our website, the jobs portal, the nyc.gov/jobs, you're going to see a handful of agencies who are actually hiring, because that's where all the money is. And then of course the mayor is talking about layoffs and things like that. It's never a good topic to talk about. But if you think about it, if you're going to add money to one section, there's going to be another section that's going to lose. So there's a win and lose, win, loss and gain kind of thing. But I'm sure once all of us come out of this COVID situation, because it's a new thing for all of us, we're going to, figure out later on that, hey, how do we better manage the money, and put it on where, without actually losing so many people.
Right.
So,
a lot of people think HR is only about, hiring and firing, but there's so many other spaces involved in HR, like performance evaluations and benefits and recruitment and onboarding. So how did you specifically get to your role, which is 55A coordinator?
Oh.
And can you tell us a little bit about what the 55A coordinator does?
Kind of similar how I got the job the first time. Yeah, there was a lot of coincidences. So originally, remember I told you it was a staff of 4, and I became the assistant. So it's me, the assistant commissioner, director, and then the analyst. The analyst at that time, he was for compliance, EEO compliance, where there's lots of reports, lots of plans and things like that. On the side, he was also the original 55A coordinator. He's my predecessor, and he was the 55A coordinator since the program started back in the 70s. So when I met him, he was already in his 70s. So you can imagine how. There was a little part I forgot to tell you. Let me add that in. Why these 3 other people, I actually have like entire loyalty to these people. Like if they tell me to go bungee jumping, you know I'm jumping. So I'm mentioning that because for a person growing up with no support and suddenly getting the support of 3 grown adults, it's like I win the lottery kind of thing, right? Yeah. So remember back in October, I got the paperwork from HR, and a few days in after reviewing everything, I actually sat there and almost cried. And one of the people, actually the director of compliance, she came up to me, and of course I'm so expressive, you can tell when I'm sad. So I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, what's wrong? And I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna get hired. She's like, why? I'm like, well, Web gives me $100 to live on in cash, and I don't have enough for fingerprinting. So I guess I'm not getting hired. So she did the one thing that city government always talks about, and that's a big no-no, which is loaning money to your fellow coworkers. It is a conflict of interest law. So, but she took a chance on me. She's like, I'm gonna loan you the money because I think you deserve this job, and you can pay me back when you first get paid. And I was in such tears, like grateful tears, that I was like, wow, you know, this is someone who only got to know me in like 3 months and put so much trust in me, you know, that I was like, wow, that hit home kind of thing. So as for the other guy, the only other guy in the office, he was the analyst for compliance, and he was a Citywide 55A coordinator. His role was, and he took it upon himself to do it. So luckily, you know, where I worked was like steps away from Chinatown. So I was able to get like lunch meal for like a few bucks, right? And he knew that I'm too prideful to ask, like too ashamed to ask. So I never said anything. I never talked about how hungry I was. I never complained. And he's the type of guy that he has a big heart. So you know what he did? He bought big lunches every single day, and then gave me the excuse that it is too much for me to eat. Want some? And I'm laughing about it because I'm remembering how he used to say it. Yeah. And he's, you know, he kind of reminds me of like Santa Claus without the beard and the hair. So he was pretty much bald, and he has the plump stomach. And I used to just like tease him. I was like, you know, you're like the granddaddy I never had. You know. Yeah. And then he was like, well, you're like the granddaughter I never had either. I thought it's fun. And I was like, okay, well, we can both play that role. But yes, he fed me every single day.
Mm.
He fed me. So bringing it back to your question, I didn't think I had I guess, passion for what I did with 55A, and until I went to therapy as an adult, and then I realized that when I was being hospitalized when I was younger, I was also diagnosed with depression, and I didn't like register that depression is a disability.
Right.
So in my family's culture, or should I say Chinese government, Chinese culture in general, any kind of mental illness or mental health, it's taboo. We don't talk about it. And any type of diagnosis is considered you're just crazy. So I never thought of it as a disability. I knew I was definitely different. I thought differently, and that I felt differently, and that I could, what is that word? Articulate my emotions very well. I can tell you what I feel all day long, that kind of thing. So, and that's from years of therapy.
Right.
So after talking to my coworker and I started reading up disabilities. I'm one of those people that if I don't know something, I will search that internet until it tells me everything, that kind of thing. And that goes along with, even though I never went to college, I was what my coworkers call me, information sponge. I would absorb everything in front of me, and I could, basically use it to my advantage. So from there, he used to do everything manually. Not that he wasn't a brilliant guy, but being that he has so many responsibilities, manual was the only way that he knew how to keep track. So he, instead of like nowadays we use Excel or Access database capabilities, he actually wrote everything out. So back in the 14 years ago, so 2006, or even early 2000, he actually wrote all 400 records by hand, and then he would slowly type it in Microsoft Word. Because he wasn't familiar with Excel, so that's what he did. He would type everything manually. So and I knew a little bit of Excel through other temp jobs that I had. So I took it upon myself. I was like, hey, do you mind if I take your handwritten notes and your typewritten records and I just shove it all in Excel? And he's like, that would make my life easier. Why not? Take the whole file, go. And that's actually how it started. So one day, he had a stroke on the way to work. He's still alive, but at that time,
okay.
Yeah, but at that time it was pretty bad. And he couldn't come to work, so he had to take sick time off. That was new to him, just like sick time to me was new to me. He never took a day off. So guess what? He got sick and he was out for months, all paid, because he never took a day off. And so I know, right? I did, honestly, I definitely stepped in that path for a little bit too.
I know exactly how many sick days I have, so that tells you where I'm at with
yes. I'm with you. I actually know it too. But definitely at that time, so when he was out and things were piling up, 55A applications were coming in and no one was doing them. And I didn't know about them, so I didn't do them. But because I helped him out with the database and the Excel and the records, they were like, do you want to learn it? I'm like, sure, why not? And it's the least, I felt like it's the least I can do for him because he fed me every day. And so I would call him at work while he's in the hospital. When he was better, I would ask him, hey, how do you do these applications? So I would sit on the phone with him for hours and I would write out everything he did. This guy had no procedures written out. Everything was inside his head. So when I spoke to him, I wrote everything out and I typed it and everything. So now I actually have a book on it, procedures on how to do 55A. And most of it, even to this day, is still the way how he did it. Because to me, it makes sense. Why change it if it's not broken, kind of thing. And that's actually how I started it. It was 2010. He was out sick. I kind of stepped into the role, and then my supervisors then was like, okay, you can be the acting coordinator. I was like, okay. I was like, titles didn't mean anything to me. So I was like, I was having fun doing the work. And then slowly, so at that time, the 55A coordinator actually didn't do events. It was just a person who's doing policy and processing applications. So I never actually met anyone.
Can you tell us exactly what the 55A program is and
Yes.
why it's such an important program and that people need to know that this exists?
Yes. So the 55A program is based on Section 55A from New York State Civil Service Law that basically says local municipalities can hire qualified job seekers with disabilities to work in government positions without taking exams. And I word it as local municipalities because every city within New York State has their own 55A program. Since I work in New York City, so I would call it our 55A program. But ideally, if you go to Westchester County, Suffolk County, Nassau County, Albany, Rochester, any other counties in New York City, New York State, sorry, they have their own 55A program. And from what I understood from the state, Access VR, they mentioned that, they're the one who gave me the stats that New York City actively uses the program. It's not something we can not use. It's there, and there's no, there are other programs that were written into the law and things like that. As time goes, new laws are created and programs get dropped. This is the one program no one dropped. So as much as some people heard of it, some people never heard of it, it really depends on the city or the county to promote it and how to use it. But because of what my predecessor did, he made his working relationships and alliances with Access VR. He's the one who introduced me to them. And then, we still talk about, hey, you remember him? I was like, yeah, I remember him. I still try to see him once a year, and so, so that's basically it. So from him, I was actually given officially the title in 2011 when he was basically deemed not able to come back to work. And that's basically it. And then from then I had all these crazy ideas of what I can do, what I couldn't do. I just think about, and then as part of it, because I started my work in equal employment opportunity, I really didn't know the HR side of it until, I guess that other day where I overworked. I got sick. I did the same thing he did. I got sick on the way to work and I was hospitalized myself. And basically my doctor told me that, Sue, if you never went to the hospital today or that day, I don't think you'd be walking at all. And I'm like, explain, doc, English? Yeah. And he's like, well, so this happened 2014, 6 years ago. I had blood clots. And I had 2 in my lungs, size of golf balls, blocking my airways, and I had 1 coming up in my right leg. Wow. Also heading somewhere up here.
Right.
But yeah, it was the result of overworking, pulling 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week. And it was just way too much. um, because I was just, I feel like part of it, I was so happy for the opportunity to work, and that I really love my job. So I kept putting myself more and more into work, and forgot about relaxing, forgot about everything else. And I just got sick. And one day it was like, as much as some of my friends and people tell me that I shouldn't use God in this sense, but I honestly think that was God's way of saying, wake up, you can't do this for the rest of your life. And if you don't start basically turning off, clocking out at the decent hour and then do something else with yourself, you're going to end up like him, basically. And, and I didn't have the age, so.
Oh.
I didn't have the age. He had a whole pension waiting. I didn't. So.
But it's interesting that you say that, because a lot of people who work in government, they work. That institutional knowledge lives with that person.
Yep.
And then that person gets sick or they die, and then the agency has to figure out what did that person know. But in your case, you and him had such a great relationship, you were able to extract that information from him to keep the program going on. Like, just imagine what would have happened, God forbid he passed away and you didn't know, it would have taken many years for the program to get back up and running, and it would have backlogged people, trying to get employment. Mm-hmm. So, the people, we have to take care of ourselves. Like, I mean, I think that is like the overarching message, is that we have to take care of ourselves, because these jobs will be here.
Yep, definitely.
And they will fill it with the next person.
Yep.
If definitely. You don't take care of yourself.
Yep. So yes, I learned life the hard way, many, many hard ways. And even working from home, 5 o'clock, I clock off. I don't even look at my laptop anymore. Today's an exception, but aside from that, all the other days, it's off.
Well, I totally appreciate you doing this. And look, Sue is in these streets. I see her before COVID. You would be out doing lots of events and at recruiting events, letting people know that, this is a way to get into city government if you have a disability through this program.
Yep. Definitely.
So, I'm so excited that you're going to be joining the Liberated Success community and doing a 2-part workshop for us in October about civil service and how young people can get into civil service and work for New York City government. And this workshop is going to be for all students, not just about the 55A program. So is there anything, final thoughts that you want to tell us about city government and why we should, maybe look and expose young people to careers with city government?
Honestly, there's so many advice I can give, but I'm gonna narrow it down. If you decide to take a break from school and just to explore, just to see what's out there, and you don't have a lot of experience, I would suggest city government, because not because I'm working in it, but if you think about it, I'll give you an example. When I first got this job, I had very little office experience, because remember, I used to work in Chinese food. So all I did was talk to customers and sell Chinese food all day. But what I've learned from that job was that it's customer service. If you learn how to speak properly, if you learn how to, use the right words to persuade someone to take on your product, kind of thing, that's all customer service. And that skill is the one that I brought over to this. I did not know PowerPoint. I did not know too much of Excel or too much about Outlook, too much about anything Office. But I knew how to pick up a phone and answer it. I would just say, take what you know and then apply it to your next job, next adventure kind of thing. Because you don't know what that new job or new place will ask of you. I frequently took on jobs that no one wanted because one, it taught me about who to trust, on what type of people you can rely on, who you can depend on when, let's say, you were out sick. So I knew who to trust just by who didn't want to do what they want to do. Okay. And I took it on. Two, by taking on jobs that you don't like, one, you develop grit. You need grit to hustle. And without it, you're just going to complain about why the day isn't moving faster. But if you have that strength, with that inner strength to keep on going, even that job that you don't like, you hate it, whatever it is. I try to use the word hate. It takes me a lot to hate something. But I didn't like it. As much as, yes, I made it sound fun. Filing papers is all great. But considering that I had no job, considering that I didn't have a penny to my name, and I needed to work for my benefits, filing papers was the best thing happened to me. Because if you think about it, with thousands of pieces of paper, and they basically told me, figure it out. Mm-hmm. You go figure it out. And then sort it. We don't want to know. And then later on, they asked, the supervisor asked, hey, how did you sort it? And then when you are able to explain it, that's how you impress people. Because they didn't give you instructions. They just said, go do something with it. And two, when you're done, when you complete it in a matter of a short time, a few weeks, when it's been sitting there for months, that's how you impress people.
Sue, this was awesome. And thank you so much for sharing your personal story. I think it's important that folks know that even, high achieving students are dealing with some things. So yeah. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm so excited that you're going to be doing a workshop with us.
I can't wait either. So super excited.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you so much for sharing your very personal story and inspiring us. So some takeaways are, do not take for granted that everything is okay with high achieving students. They need support too. 2, it is super important to take care of yourself. These jobs will be here when you are gone. And 3, people are always watching. If you stay ready, you don't have to get ready when an opportunity presents itself. Do your job with care and integrity. Welcome to the Liberated Success community, Sue. I am so excited you will be facilitating our Careers with New York City Civil Service 101 webinar on October 19th and 26th, 5 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. This is a 2-part webinar. The webinar is ideal for current high school juniors and seniors, current college students, and job seekers. The registration link is in the link tree in my bio on IG, Twitter, and YouTube, and it is the first comment on Facebook. If you like this video, show us some love with a donation. The link is in the link tree as well. Also, don't forget to register for Shared Talents Family Conference. It goes live next week, and I will be facilitating a webinar called Liberated Career Choices. You don't want to miss it. All right, folks, thank you for watching to the end. We will save ourselves. Wear your mask, wash your hands, physically distance, all Black Lives Matter, and vote Biden-Harris. See you next week.
One whole day to play. Come on, everybody.